Now we come to the portion of the service before we get into our Bible study that we talk about end times news and prophecy update as we do each week. And we do want to welcome the online church and subscribers around the world. Thank you for joining with us, and thank you for interacting with us. And some of the comments that have been on there, whether it's positive or negative, getting some feedback. And but we thank you for also sending in your prayer requests and also praise reports. That we want you to be in this journey with us. We talk about signs of the times on a weekly basis and what's going on from what's happening around the world, earth-wise, nature-wise, what's happening in the skies and stuff, from earthquakes, hurricanes, those sort of things. The moral issue, the immorality, the homosexuality, that whole agenda. Religion, from apostasy, deception, persecution that's happening around the world, technology, the cashless society, the missiles, the cyber terrorism, also the nations, dealing with wars and rumors of wars, and the kingdom against kingdom, governments, policies, bankruptcy, and of course, Israel. So those are the main things. When you look at the news reports, the internet, what's happening, that's your filter grid. And those are coming out of what the Bible talks about in Matthew 24 and also 2 Timothy chapter 3. So if you want to see what's happening on the end times and the days that we're living in, that's your filter grid. So everything kind of filters through that. First of all, to address the disaster, the devastation that happened the other day in Paris. Again, it's a war. We might not be at war with Islam, but Islam is at war with the world. Their goal is to take over the world. Not every Muslim is bad. We're not trying to throw them all into one camp, okay? But you have a select group of fanatical people that are obeying what the Quran tells them to do. This is what a good Muslim does, okay? But in the last 10 years or so, since 9/11 in 2001, there's been over 27,269 terror attacks. Okay? Just in the last week or so, since October 31st through November 6th, here's the stats that happened during that period of time. The number of jihad attacks was over 34. The Allahu Akbars, that's where they commit suicide and blow themselves up, there was over 7. Over 378 dead bodies and over 140 critically injured. Yesterday's attack, over 229 or 129 dead and over 350 more wounded. So again, Paris, and the world is devastated to hear this, to hear these attacks. This is the harshest attack on French soil since World War II, and especially there in Paris. We know that there's definitely 3 main shootings that took place and 3 other main explosions in a hostage situation. There are 5 terrorists that have been killed, and there's still numerous of others that are still at large. Also, the French president declared a state of emergency, and he deployed over 1,500 military personnel. So they're in lockdown. There was a movie that came out many years ago in 98 called The Siege. And it takes place in New York City, where there's terrorists coming in there and how they implement martial law. It's exactly what we're seeing to take place here in France and other parts of the world. A couple of years ago when the Boston bombing took place, there was under martial law there. That is eventually what the goal of the cities are going to do, putting curfews on cities and also implementing that. But the sound of these machine guns, AK-47s, grenades being heard all over the town there, and then, of course, the shouts of Allahu Akbar when they commit these terrorist acts. And again, it was a coordinated act by ISIS, is what they're pointing it to. Again, major parts of the train system have shut down. The borders are closed with complete lockdown at the airports. Many of the airlines have stopped flying into Paris now until this is under control, and that affects the economy. That affects a lot of things going around the world. It's crippling a lot of things going on, even what took place in Egypt a couple weeks ago. Right now, Egypt is losing close to $2 billion, in economics, because the tourists have stopped coming in there because of that. Even speaking out, there's a guy, a brother somewhere, I'm not going to mention where he's at, around the world. He mentioned this. There's a friend of his that put a thing on Facebook, posted on social media. He's not one for doing political stuff, but he just called it like it is. An hour or so after he put that post up there, his Facebook account got deleted. But this is part of the control of the government. They see everything that your emails, your servers, your posts, everything's exposed to the government. But as Christians, how do we respond? Of course, we respond by prayer and praying that God would minister and heal and save and open the eyes of the blind, those who are blinded to the truth, praying for the victims, praying for the wisdom for leaders and justice for all as well. So, and it's not a coincidence this happened as the G20 summit, we'll mention that in just a few minutes, starts today and tomorrow in Turkey. So, not a coincidence, all these sort of things coming to pass. And again, the fear, this is their goal, is to create fear within people. So, to get nations to bow down to what ISIS wants, and they want world domination. So, this is one way that they're going to try to cripple people, economy, cities, and the plan to take over. So, that's kind of a tidbit what's going on, but you never know where it's going to happen. So, we need to be ready. How are we going to respond when that happens? Onto the earth and seeing what's going on. Chile had 12 major earthquakes in the last several days alone. The lowest one was 4.0, two large of 6.9, and then there was another was 6.8. And then just the other day or a couple hours ago, there was a 7.0 that hit off the coast of Japan and Korea. And so they're issuing these tsunami warnings. Again, dozens of volcanoes going off and all over the parts of the world. But each month we talk about the frequency and the magnitude of the earthquakes, especially of the rim, the Ring of Fire, it's called. Going from the coast of South America, where Chile is, all the way up through Alaska, through Japan, down here in Australia and New Zealand. So we're starting to see the increase there. The number one place, of all places, that it's the earthquake, number one in the world is Oklahoma. Interesting place of being rated that, but according to New York Magazine, it's mentioned that. And also there's a website called earthquaketracker.com. Just yesterday when I saw this report, they had 4 earthquakes today. 65 in the last 7 days, 190 earthquakes in the last month, and 2,165 in the past year. That's a lot of shaking going on. A verse comes to mind when you're hearing all these stuff. In Romans chapter 8, verse 22, talks about the earth, creation groaning. Okay? This is what it's talking about. The earth is groaning for the Creator. And you're seeing the weather patterns all over the world. It gets stranger and stranger. Just in Yemen, in the hit with a second major tropical storm in less than a week. Just crazy stuff going on worldwide, from flooding to earthquakes to volcanoes. It's getting worse and worse, and that's kind of the signs of the times that we're living in. On a moral issue, again, sad to see this, but Obama becomes the first sitting president to pose for an LGBT magazine. So again, he's been a huge ally for them since he's taken office. Again, securing marriage equality and other landmark initiatives, and how they call it transforming America, but it's really destroying America. And it's just sad to see the priorities of this current president. And no wonder why America is imploding and self-destructing when the moral fabric of the nation is gone. On a technological issue, interesting how Apple boss, chief executive Tim Cook, he mentions in a bold prediction, really it's not much of a prediction, but he says the death of cash, he promotes Apple Pay alternatives. So what he's saying is that the next generation is not going to know what money is, because it's going to be a cashless society. So it's interesting to think about that concept. As we still have cash in hand, the next generation, eventually, there's no going to be cash anymore. It's a cashless society. Eventually, as we know, it's going to be the mark of the beast. Dealing with the nations. Tragedy, and again, what's happening in Germany, just the destruction of the immigrants of coming in there and Islam taking over. But even with Angela Merkel, there's outright rebellion within her own party over this crisis. Again, she has this full-on open-door policy, and there's people now in her party are saying this is not a good thing. We're starting to see the devastation and what's going on here. And there are, as we said before, legitimate refugees happening. Okay? And there's also a huge pocket of the whole ISIS and Islamic invasion. But these refugees, they do need to be reached with the gospel. God is bringing them to different parts of the world, and as Christians, we need to respond. How are we going to respond to that? And so they're coming to our countries. We need to also be ready to minister to them before they get into their Islamic little subcultural groups. That's the key to reaching them. And a couple weeks' time, there's a guy that I'm going to have come in and share, and he has a huge ministry in Indonesia. Planted thousands of churches, Bible college, but very well grounded in this whole issue here, not only the refugee crisis going on, but just how to reach a Muslim for Christ. And so, he's been there since 1974. So he knows what he's talking about in dealing with Islamic people. And so we need to educate ourselves, and we also need to be ready for when it happens. Again, over 24,000 refugees will be coming here to Australia in the near future. How are we going to respond? Also, as we mentioned, the G20 summit happening starting today and tomorrow. Again, they're going to definitely be talking about what took place in Paris. But there's also going to be the continued implementation of what took place at the UN General Assembly and the whole new 2030 agenda, which is really a new world order taking over. So this is kind of more implementation of that. One world government, one world currency, one world religion. All these things are coming together. And of course, they're going to address the emerging economies and markets around the world and how everything's slowing down, part of their plan. And so again, just for us to be aware of it, we know there's a lot of behind-the-door deals that things are no one's going to know, except for the high-ups in those countries. Dealing with Israel. Again, there's going to continue to be escalation and fights and wars going on there. Hamas fired a rocket from northern Gaza Strip on Tuesday, and what Israel believes likely a test. And again, they fired it into the Mediterranean Sea just to test the rocket system. And the previous week on Sunday night, Israel did carry out an airstrike attack in Gaza in response to a rocket that hit earlier in Israel that day. But they target a Hamas installation, and the military also said that Hamas infrastructure was destroyed, but there's no casualties. Same thing when Hamas launched the rocket into Israel, there was no casualties there. Again, no claim of responsibility for the attack, but Israel has often said that they hold Hamas rulers responsible for any and all attacks from the coastal territory. So again, when a rocket's coming in from that area, who else is it? You don't have to wonder what other countries trying to attack you. It's always going to be the PLO, the Palestinian Authority, or in Hamas. Also, meeting with Prime Minister or Vladimir Putin, Benjamin Netanyahu, back in September, and this came out of the Jerusalem Post on Tuesday. He also met with Obama on Monday. But he mentioned to one of his discussions with Putin that Israel will respond strongly to any effort by Iran to establish an offensive corridor on Syria's border in the Golan Heights, despite Russian military operations nearby. He mentioned this in a report on Monday night. So he also mentioned that the primary goal of Israel is to prioritize its defense, threats, and defeat or mitigate them accordingly. In his meeting with Obama on Monday, he's asked, and Israel's asked for an increase in defense increase from $3 billion to $5 billion a year between year 2017 to 2027, basically giving Israel the tools that they need to defend itself. And again, any nation should be able to defend itself. And again, when Israel's being attacked on a daily basis, you need help as well. Hezbollah, according to the Israel National News, has 150,000 missiles pointed toward Israel right now. On a recent report, they thought it was only 100,000 missiles. One's enough. But when you have 100,000, but here's a new report that came out, 150,000 are aimed at Israel. So it does put you on alert. But this is what Israel has to live with on a daily basis. And part of, again, with Hezbollah, they're getting their weaponry from Iran, going through Syria. So this is why Israel had also attacked what went on in Syria on Wednesday. Israel airstrike in Damascus International Airport, with reports indicating that was knocked out. The flights were temporarily halted. And again, this is an example of how we're starting to see little by little Isaiah 17 being fulfilled, where it says that Damascus will be a heap of ruins. So some reports indicated the target alleged the strike against Iranian shipment weapons and that intended for Hezbollah. So that's part of the intention when Israel's attacking into Syria. Again, part of another report that came out with the Hezbollah leader, he said that Hezbollah intends to attack Israel in the real soon. So we're starting to see that escalation. And then finally, out of another report out of Israel, that the Israeli army begins a broad reserve call for the West Bank deployment. So after 6 weeks of unrest, it begins to seemingly clear that the war of attrition. So again, they need to restock its supplies and personnel. So again, the first call up of orders of operational duty for West Bank in January received this week by 4 reserved battalions. And again, every individual that lives in Israel, they are required to serve their military for a couple of years. You know, a lot of countries do that as well. So, and again, when you're a country that's always under fire and in war, you're going to need to have that in place. And so, but in 2016, the plans are drawn up for Israel Defense Force calls many for such action. So we can see we're just barely skimming the surface of what's happening around the world. And so there's a lot going on. So we need to be praying for our brothers and sisters around the world that are going through persecution. They need wisdom. They need grace. They need protection. They need, whatever is needed. The Lord can give them. And but we all need to be aware. We all need to be equipped. What can happen to us? We need to have those conversations. What if it happened here? There's things that have been going on here in Melbourne and also in Sydney. It's not too far in distant land. It's here in our own backyard. So we need to be aware of what's happening. We need to be prepared physically, mentally, and spiritually by praying and being in the Word of God. Amen? That concludes today's update.